Welcome to the TC Dojo from Single Sourcing Solutions. The TC Dojo is a TechCom community that is driven by you. Tell us what you want to learn. You choose the topics, and we find the experts. We are very lucky to have Deborah Sauer and Sam Park from Sonos visiting the TC Dojo Masters. I saw Deborah and Sam at STC Spectrum in New York last year. They pioneered a true partnership for collaboration between technical publications and user experience at Sonos. Deborah is a principal writer in the content strategy group, and Sam is a senior UX designer on the platform and partner teams. Together, they collaborate with nearly every group at Sonos to deliver a complete and consistent user experience for their customers. And I'm grateful they both agreed to be the visiting Dojo Masters today.
Okay, hi. Welcome to our presentation, The Interplay of UX and Technical Communication. Here's our agenda for our presentation today. And as Liz said, we'll answer any questions at the end of the session. So for the introductions, I'm Deborah, and I'm the content strategy writer half of this partnership. I'm a seasoned technical writer, and I've been at Sonos for 10 years.
Hi, my name is Sam Park. I'm the other second half. I'm a UX senior designer focusing on voice experience currently. I'm very excited to be here because although there is always room to improve in collaboration, we came a long way already to get to where we are today working at Sonos. Before we get into how we work, let's start with what's Sonos? To put the grand scheme of things in one sentence, we provide the easy-to-use wireless home sound system.
At Sonos, our guiding principle is the experience comes first. It's not just about being technically accurate, it's about delighting our users. We work hard to make the experience both simple and engaging. It's harder than it sounds to make something really simple. When you purchase Sonos, it's like giving yourself a gift.
Sonos' mission is to empower listeners. Deborah and I support this mission from user experience point of view in the UX team. The UX team supports the user's journey from taking a speaker out of the box to playing the content like music and TV with our touch control on the speaker, voice control, Sonos app, as well as some of our partners' app or devices.
So let's talk about how Sam and I work in cross-functional teams. The app is where our work intersects, so it's where we interact the most.
We have many teams and professionals impacting our app. Even our partners in music services and voice services put constraints on what we do, what we can't do. Depending on the phase and the nature of the project, we will interact with different teams. For example, I'm currently working with PM, software devs, marketing, and user research teams daily.
So look at that matrix of stakeholders. Wow. With all those players involved, who really owns the content? So it's funny, but yeah, it's a real thing, right? Each stakeholder can feel that they own the content. If you don't manage the process and expectations up front, it can get messy and maybe even contentious. So how do we work together and share the responsibility?
We believe that it's good to have a strong point of view and express your professional opinions. It's not like your friend killed my father kind of fight if you watch the movie, but we think that professionally, passionately, but politely disagreeing could balance the outcome. So the organization believes in disagree and commit. We can continue to have conversation about content, but at some point we should find the middle ground and make decisions so we can go forward.
So we take the time to remind ourselves and others that after all, we all have the same goal, doing what's best for the users. With that in mind, we follow these behaviors. We always listen and hear what other people say, what others say, really hear them. Be present and listen, even if you don't think it isn't relevant to you, because actually it probably is. Defer judgment. All concerns are valid, so be open-minded. Learn from user research. Don't get caught up in the those users just don't get it, it's them trap. Don't fall in love with your work. It's probably going to change. It may be for reasons completely outside of the writing and completely out of your control, but it's going to change. So embrace change.
As we talked about, we're working with many other teams and professions. So how do we collaborate? We try to use the best set of tools depending on whom we are working with. Here are some examples.
So Confluence, we use this all the time. Good for capturing all content. Our company spans many time zones. Everyone in the company has access to Confluence, making it a good tool for collaborating with teammates around the world. We also use Jira. We use it to track task-based work with developers, UX designers, PMs, etc. We also open our own Jira tickets for our own work, that is the writing. I have Jira tickets for my writing tasks. That way we can track the progress of copy as it moves through our pipeline.
This is an example of using Sketch application. It's a useful tool for designers to lay out the mockup. Deborah and I often look at a flow together on Sketch to update copy on the fly, and we'll get into more details later. From Sketch, I would upload screen to Zeppelin. Zeppelin is a great tool to share a project with other disciplines and collaborate with other professions through comments. In Zeppelin, you can make comments at any point in the view and start a conversation. We'll also get into a few more details on Zeppelin tool later.
So here's a list of the tools we use in the user experience group. It's an evolving list. We'll adopt and abandon various tools as our needs change and different tools become available. Here you see the ones that I use highlighted. These are the ones that I use for collaboration most often. I'm in these tools pretty much all day, every day.
As we have reviewed, Confluence, Jira, Zeppelin, and Sketch are great collaboration tools and to design. Abstract and Figma are tools that allow multiple designers to work on same sketch files. Sonos started to use Google Doc, Slides, and Sheets for collaborations, but I personally have been using these tools for voice specification as well.
So let's talk about the roles of writer and designer at Sonos. We currently have 4 content strategy writers and 21 user experience designers. So you can see that the writers are supporting a lot of designers. Since we both have input into the user experience, how do we interact? Well, we look at the same things, but from a different point of view. There's a lot involved in creating a successful user experience in the app. It's more than just words and pictures. From the content strategy point of view, we think about things like adhering to standards of quality technical writing, because that's the baseline. If you don't have that, you're off track already. Things like technical limitations, such as copy length, and whether you can use certain conventions, such as bold, inline icons, etc. Information architecture. The order of content is important, both because order implies importance and because the copy that appears first can grab or lose the user's attention. Project management. We work within the confines of app development schedules, which is far different from the traditional user guide schedule. And solving problems, because sometimes the copy in the app has to convey something that is particularly difficult to explain, and we have to find a way to do it that is still extremely simple and concise.
UX responsibility can be very broad, but the essence of the core responsibility is to present a creative solution focusing on user emotion. And the creative solution can be expressed in many ways, often through flows of screens. For my current role, I create a lot of diagrams and matrix for voice projects. We ask similar but different questions. In case of looking at a project, we may ask these questions. As a designer, I ask user-centric questions for different scenarios that users can get to.
For my role, we think a lot about the user journey. What is the user trying to do? What task do we want them to complete at this point on this screen? How did they get here? Where did they come from in the flow? What is currently on their mind because of what they saw last? What happens next? What is the key takeaway from the current screen that they'll be thinking about when they go to the next screen? What do they need to understand? Is there a concept they need to grasp here? And why does it matter to them? Why do they care? We can't just tell them to perform steps without giving them context. The style guide for app copy is similar to that for user guide copy, but it has some unique requirements. We talk about tone of voice. We want to be casual and friendly, but don't be hip or clever. We avoid quote unquote surfer dude language. And I'm always asking myself, how would I say that to someone standing next to me? If you work near me every day, you'll hear me saying things out loud because I want to hear how it sounds as though I were saying it to someone next to me. We also have to be mindful of things like checking spelling, which seems obvious, but many of the tools we use can't do this. Software developers copy the text from a spec directly into the code. So if there are any errors in the text, they're going to get copied too.
As a UX designer, when I think of a style guide, I think of UI style guide or design library, which impact the consistency of user experience greatly. However, we both keep in mind these three things: clarity, consistency, and conciseness.
So for clarity, we want to be specific in word choice, use exactly the right word that means the meaning we're trying to convey. We watch for jargon and abbreviations. It's really easy to let things slip into the writing, but we'll make sure that we are mindful of that. We front load our copy and put the important words up front. And don't be lazy. You can have buttons that say okay and cancel, but maybe more precise words would be better for those kinds of buttons. For consistency, we always want to present the information the same way, period. If there's any inconsistency, that can also lead to questions about whether other things in the app are not as evenly or well presented or thought out. And conciseness, less is more. Just tell me and be honest with the user. We think about concerns too, like text expansion. The Sonos app is localized into 17 languages. English text translated into German expands by 30%. 100 words in English is 130 words in German. That's significant. Remember, we're working with cell phone screen real estate. It's really small.
And when I create UI design as a UX designer, I always have to keep in mind the text expansion as well, and make sure to be flexible in character limits and truncations. And when I create icons and assets, I have to make sure the visual communication is international. So we have differences and similarities in our perspectives. Let's talk about how we interact.
So Sam and I often start out at the whiteboard. This is an example of a brainstorming session about the information architecture for one of our pieces of education. You can see that we have the outline of the layouts of the screens, and we think about things like dropdowns, images, and CTAs, which are call to action, which you would think of as buttons.
This is an example of copy refinement on Sketch. We have to set rules as we have multiple people working on multiple projects and timelines. As an example, we use pink text to indicate the changes, so not only us, but also engineers would know which copy is new to implement.
In Zeppelin, we found that this legend that you see is the best way for us to interact most efficiently. When we developed it, it was a real game changer in the efficiency of how we work together. The color coding makes it extremely easy to see what needs my attention. I only have to look at the yellow notes. Those are the open notes about copy. It allows me to focus on my work and not spend time sorting through comments that aren't relevant to me.
Both UX and writers are involved in this process. In general, a project or program starts with exploration phase. We define goals, understand the scope of the work, identify key requirements and stakeholders, and write design brief. Then we brainstorm within the UX team or with stakeholders to create sketches and mock-ups to get the design direction during discovery phase. With the design direction from the discovery phase, in the creation phase, we build a design, and sometimes it may require making prototypes and mapping a user journey to review with stakeholders. If we find that we need to make changes, often being technical limitations, we may go back to the discovery phase and repeat the process to make design refinement. When the stakeholders are aligned on the design, we finalize the design and make specification to share with engineers through Jira tickets, which is the part of the execution phase. But that's not the end, because during implementation, engineers may find new technical limitations as they implement. So we may go back to previous phases to make adjustment to the design spec. We also may support QAs to test the implementation. And often this is where we find the localized copy not fitting into a given design, which will require more adjustments. When the implementation is done, which we call FC, feature complete, we would need to measure. We go into a larger pool of testing during alpha and beta, where we would measure our success rates and to validate the design to make the last minute small adjustments before GA. GA is the general availability, which means we are publishing the implementation to the public. After GA, we would still watch the data and feedback to learn and make further improvements and maintain the feature. It also may create follow-up questions to implement features that could not fit in the initial timeframe and the scope. In addition, the measure does not happen only after feature complete. Various forms of user testing can happen before and throughout the project to get design direction or to validate the assumption and design. So let's talk about testing.
There are several different types of user testing. Hallway testing, which is informal, but it's an excellent barometer of how the copy will perform. User surveys, which is good for situations where it's best for people to do the feedback on their own time. User research can take many forms, including online interviews, in-home interviews, where we actually go into people's homes and visit them and talk to them about a product or a feature, and on-site interviews where we may have testing rooms or mock home setups in apartments or Airbnbs where we can talk to people about how they use a product or a feature. And also we have a formal beta program that is much more extensive and many more weeks than some of these other methods of testing. Sam and I have done testing together twice. We'll talk about how we did it for something called the Help and Tips project. We had this opportunity because our researchers didn't have the resources to do the testing at the time that we needed it, and the research projects were manageable in size that we could do it ourselves. We conducted the research with the user researchers' guidance. This picture shows the Help and Tips research testing we did in February 2017. We were part of a team that created Help and Tips as a Hack Week project. The initial user research was done by a member of our user research team, and we did a second round of testing that was specifically around design and copy.
It was a perfect combination to partner to do the user testing between a UX designer and a content strategy writer. Besides coming up with questions together, I designed how we would test our questions to create a comfortable environment for the participants and led the design sessions. Deborah, in the meanwhile, took the notes of the massive information in each session in organized fashion so we can extract useful data points out of the testing. As an outcome, we got to validate some of our assumptions, and I believe our collaboration amplified through these user research sessions and that impacted the project greatly. In closing, so what does it mean for us, Deborah?
Well, it's really great. We're part of the user experience team. We've increased our visibility and value in the organization. We've become a resource for content creation and review across the organization. By that, I mean the company. And our collaboration makes the user experience better. But be careful what you wish for. Now we're involved in content across the organization, the company, including things like onboarding, education, flows, toast messages, error messages, beta communications, and surveys. We write a copy across multiple touch points, which is great because we can ensure consistency across the user experience, but it's a lot more work and requires resources.
All content needs to be worked together and no decision should be made in a vacuum. But sometimes you get this urge to push the project forward without talking to another person because it may feel like such a small copy change. because it can feel like a small step, more work, and takes time to go back and forth with other people. But I have to say, even if you think the copy is at the best point it can be, when I work with professional writers, it always gets better. And yes, you can call me on this. All copy is important, even if it's small text like button text or conjunctions, because it is all touch points for our users. So it needs to have a consistent Sonos voice and brand, which I am thankful I have a professional writer like Deborah as my teammate.
And most importantly, remember the prime directive, the experience comes first. So, who's the creative one here? And the answer is we both are. So in the case of John and Paul, it was obviously more creative as a pair than as individuals, even if at times they appeared to work in opposition to each other. And as it turns out, the essence of their achievements was relational. And the same is true here for us, for Sam and May. Our contributions as a team are far greater than our contributions as individuals. So thank you for listening to our presentation, and I think we have time for questions.
That was fabulous. Thank you, ladies. Now it's time to type in those questions if you haven't already. And while you do, here's a look at what's coming up. The TC Dojo Mastermind Groups are monthly driven member discussion groups where attendees present their specific challenges to a group of their peers in a confidential, supportive environment. A mastermind is a collaborative environment where everyone lends their experience to each other. They can get feedback and advice about topics on their mind in real time from others who've been in their shoes. It's been amazing to participate in and a lot of fun too. We have 3 going on right now. One is everything TechCom, data, topic-based authoring, the specifics of cross-references or graphics. The other 2 are product-focused on Windchill for IT and ArborText users. These sessions are not free. They're a way to guarantee commitment between the participants. You can sign up at the TC Dojo website at mastermind.tcdojo.org. We know sometimes magic is just having the time to collaborate with someone who's been where you are. Next time in the TC Dojo, we have Erin Wiedmer and Danielle Matthews coming to talk about accessibility and documentation. They're going to give us examples, good and bad, always useful. That's how we all learn. You each mentioned style guides. Have you integrated the TechCom style guide with the UX style guide or the other way around? Can you talk about that?
Would you want to answer for
What was
your
the question
perspective?
again?
Have we integrated the UX and writing style guides? So we use a Confluence page for documenting the styles, and we use screenshots from the various users' specs, so that it can be very easy to identify if it's a toast message, do we use punctuation? What kind of capitalization do we use? We want all of that to be consistent across the touch points. So we've kind of combined them in that way by having the written description of what the style guide is, and then also images with examples of screenshots from specs.
All right, Shane, let us know if that answers your question. All right, here's the next one. How accessible are the software tools you use for people with disabilities to use? For example, I work with several programmers and others in my organization that are blind or visually impaired. So we need to use software that everyone can access. Do you guys have any idea about that for the tools you guys use?
Do you have any idea, Sam, if the tools we use are accessible for people with like vision problems? Do they have screen readers or anything like that built into Figma or Sketch?
Not that I know of. I know we do testings and validates the design for the disabilities, but the tools itself that we use, I actually haven't checked.
Yeah. So for the Sonos app that we develop, we keep that in mind as part of what we do for creating our own app, the Sonos app. But Sam's not sure if the tools that we use do that.
Good question, though.
The tools themselves.
Yeah. All right, how do you maintain a library of UI text for patterns and reference? Are there tools or technologies you use in particular?
Well, if I think I understand that your question, you're asking like if we have copy that we might reuse or use something similar, we want to have that available to us so that we can reuse that content and not have to remember what did we write on that screen 6 months ago. I think that's the question. So we have access to all of the specs going back, all the histories and everything, but in addition, we're working on, actually this is something we're working on right now, trying to develop a content management like database so that when we do write about something, we can look for keywords to be able to use that same type of content over again. And then our localization vendor also has a translation database so that they can use the same terminology when they're translating the same text into this, they'll make it the same way they translated it last time.
And for visual designers, we do have a design library, and that's what we symbol. It's made into what we call symbol. So everyone shared this sketch file that is everything has symbol. So all you do is utilize the same assets and the visual communication through your UX flows. But we also have documented on the Confluence page how those symbols and the visual design was created so that when you need to create a new kind of visual system, you can reference it and then make new symbols or layouts in the sketch file that's shared.
Cool. Where in your workflow do you handle localization?
The copy in the app is localized along with the app, and we work with a localization vendor that pulls the strings and localizes them and then redelivers them back to us so that they're integrated into the app kind of on the fly. Not the live app, of course, that the customers see, but as we're developing it and getting it ready for release.
Is that before or after FC?
That's before, well, during actually, because we also, we have beta programs. So if we have some text that's part of beta and there's some questions or concerns about it, we can address that during the beta program before it goes GA as well. So it'll get rewritten, which also means it'll be relocalized, again, kind of on the fly as the localization vendor pulls the strings nightly and delivers stuff back to us.
All right. How do you work with development teams? Where in the life cycle of product dev, and do you work in agile environment?
Okay. Yeah, we do work in the agile environment, and I like to involve the stakeholders as early as possible, even whether we need them or not. So even in the exploration phase, I usually like to let all my stakeholders know that it's starting. And include them throughout the process, because often if we involve them late, not only the design may have to change a lot later on, but also developers would invest mentally throughout the design process. So if they are scoping their dev work, they're willing to implement better design, even if it's more work, since they mentally have invested from the beginning.
Nice. One last one. How do you keep on the leading edge of technology in both user instruction and UI software?
Well, in terms of the copy, we really are looking at what everyone else is doing, research, I think what everybody does, and any kind of app experience is valid to look at and research. It doesn't have to be something that's similar to what we do here at Sonos. It could be a completely different kind of product or app. So we're just, constantly looking at things and trying to envision the next step or the next phase for our app.
For UX, if you're asking about tools, then we're always looking out to what kind of new tools are out there. And we do have team dedicated looking into and experiment within the tools. But in terms of the technology for Sonos, often designers think, okay, what is the real need for users? And trying to think what is the desired and happy path in terms of the design, then look for technology and brainstorm with the developers to see if there's such technology we can either develop or to have partnership with others to make that technology work out.
Awesome. And I have a comment that says, thanks for the great answers. Well done. Thanks for coming to the Single Sourcing Solutions TC Dojo, where it's all about you, what you want to learn. You should always attend a webinar live because you can't ask questions of a video. Subscribe to our TC Dojo mailing list at join.tcdojo.org and never miss another. Every month, we go out and find experts willing to share their expertise based on your votes in the TC Dojo survey. Why should we tell you what to learn? You should tell us. So be sure to vote at survey.tcdojo.org. The TC Dojo is our pleasure to host. As always, if you need more personal help, we're here to take you from the basics to mastery. See you next time.